I never thought the man who promised to love me forever would be the one to literally throw me away like garbage. But lying at the bottom of that cliff, blood pooling beneath my broken body, listening to my 10-year-old daughter's terrified whisper telling me to play dead, that's when I finally understood what I'd been too blind to see for years. My name is Rebecca Torres, I'm 34 years old, and this is the story of how my husband tried to murder me and our daughter, and how we made sure he'd regret every single breath he took after that day. Hey, before I dive into this nightmare that became my reality, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from right now. Seriously, I want to know, because what happened to me could happen to anyone, anywhere. And if you've ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted with your whole heart, you're going to want to hear every word of this. Make sure to check the description box below for more stories like this, real stories from real people who survived the unthinkable. Because we need to talk about these things. We need to stop pretending that monsters don't sometimes sleep in our beds and kiss us goodnight. Let me take you back to where it all began, not the cliff, not the push, but to 7 years earlier when I still believed in happily ever after. I was 27, working as a pediatric nurse at St. Vincent's Hospital in Denver, Colorado. My days were long, my scrubs were always coffee-stained, and I was exhausted in that specific way that comes from caring too much about tiny humans fighting for their lives. But I loved it. I loved those kids. I loved being the person who could make them smile even when they were scared and hurting. That's where I met Marcus. Marcus Coleman. God, even his name used to make my heart race. He was a pharmaceutical sales rep who'd come by the hospital regularly, always impeccably dressed in those expensive suits that made him look like he'd stepped out of a magazine. He had this confidence about him, this way of walking into a room like he owned it, but without the arrogance that usually comes with men like that. His smile was warm, genuine. His eyes, dark brown, almost black, seemed to really see me, not just look at me. The first time we talked, really talked, I was having the worst day of my career. We'd lost a patient. A 6-year-old boy named Tommy who'd been battling leukemia for 2 years. I'd known it was coming, we all had, but that doesn't make it any easier when you're standing in a hospital room watching a mother collapse over her child's still body. I'd held it together through my shift, professional and composed, but the moment I stepped into the break room and saw it was empty, I shattered. That's when Marcus found me. He'd been waiting to speak with Dr. Harrison about some new medication trial, but instead he found me sobbing into my hands, mascara running down my face, looking absolutely destroyed. Most people would have backed away slowly, pretended they hadn't seen anything. Not Marcus. He sat down next to me, didn't say a word, just handed me his pocket square, an actual monogrammed pocket square, because of course he had one, and waited. When I finally stopped crying enough to apologize, embarrassed beyond belief, he just shook his head. Don't, he said. Anyone who can care that much about another person's child is exactly the kind of person the world needs more of. I fell for him right then and there. Looking back now, I can see how calculated it probably was, how he'd seen an opportunity and seized it like the predator he truly was. But in that moment, it felt real. It felt like fate. We started dating 2 weeks later. He was everything I thought I wanted, attentive, romantic, successful. He'd show up at my apartment after my night shifts with takeout from my favorite Thai place. He'd leave little notes in my car. He remembered every detail I told him, brought me flowers for no reason, planned these elaborate date nights that made me feel like the center of his universe. 6 months in, he told me he loved me. We were at this overlook point in the mountains, ironically, considering how this story ends, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. He'd brought wine and a blanket, and we were lying there watching the light fade when he turned to me and said those 3 words with such intensity, such certainty, that I believed him completely. I love you, Rebecca. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You're it for me. You're my person. I said it back without hesitation. Because I loved him too. Or at least, I loved who I thought he was. We got married 8 months later in a small ceremony at a vineyard outside Boulder. It was perfect, or it seemed perfect at the time. My mom cried. My dad walked me down the aisle and whispered, "He better treat you right, or he'll answer to me." God, I wish my dad was still alive to see what Marcus really was. Then again, maybe it's better he isn't here to witness how badly I misjudged everything. The first year of marriage was good. Really good. We bought a house in Lakewood, a cute craftsman-style place with a big backyard and a front porch I'd always dreamed of having. Marcus's career was taking off. He'd been promoted to regional manager, which meant better money, more travel, but he always made time for me. Or so I thought. Then I got pregnant. I remember the exact moment I found out. I was working a shift, feeling nauseous all morning, and one of the other nurses, Karen, who'd been doing this for 30 years, took one look at me and said, "Girl, when was your last period?" I hadn't even thought about it. Between work and life and everything else, I just assumed I was stressed. But Karen marched me to the staff bathroom with a pregnancy test from our supply closet, stood outside the door, and waited. 2 lines. Clear as day. 2 pink lines that meant everything was about to change. I called Marcus from the hospital parking lot. Couldn't even wait until I got home. "I'm pregnant," I blurted out the second he answered. There was silence on the other end, just long enough for my heart to drop, and then he let out this whoop of joy so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Are you serious? Oh my God, Beck, we're having a baby. I'm coming to get you right now. Don't move. I love you so much." He showed up 20 minutes later, still in his work clothes, and literally swept me off my feet in the parking lot, spinning me around while I laughed and told him to put me down before I threw up on his expensive suit. That night, we lay in bed talking about names, about the future, about all the things we'd do as a family. He put his hand on my still flat stomach and promised, "I'm going to be the best dad in the world. I'm going to give this kid everything. Give you everything. You're giving me the greatest gift anyone's ever given me, Rebecca." I believed every word. Pregnancy was harder than I expected. Morning sickness that lasted all day, exhaustion so profound I could barely function, and then complications in the 3rd trimester that put me on bed rest for the last 6 weeks. Marcus stepped up, or appeared to. He took time off work, made me meals, rubbed my swollen feet, told me how beautiful I was even when I felt like a beached whale. But there were moments, little flickers of something that didn't quite fit. Times when I'd wake up at 2 a.m. and he wouldn't be in bed, and I'd find him in his office with the door locked, talking on the phone in hushed tones. "Just work stuff," he'd say when I asked. "These accounts never sleep, babe. Go back to bed." Once, his phone buzzed on the nightstand while he was in the shower, and I glanced at it without thinking. A text from a number not saved in his contacts. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Miss you." I asked him about it later, casually, and he didn't even blink. "Oh, that's probably my assistant. She always sends reminders about meetings. You know how scattered I've been lately." I accepted it because I wanted to. Because I was about to have his baby and I needed to believe in us. Our daughter, Lily, was born on October 15th at 3:47 a.m. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with a head full of dark hair and lungs that could wake the dead. The moment they placed her in my arms, everything else in the world disappeared. She was perfect. Absolutely perfect. And when Marcus held her for the first time, tears streaming down his face, I thought, this is it. This is what life is supposed to be. If only I'd known that the man crying over our newborn daughter would someday try to kill her. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the years in between. The slow, insidious way poison can seep into your life when you're not paying attention, when you're too tired and too trusting and too damn in love to see what's right in front of you. Lily was colicky for the first 3 months. I'm talking screaming for hours on end, nothing soothing her. Both of us crying together at 4 a.m. while Marcus slept soundly in the guest room because one of us needs to be functional for work. I tried not to resent it. I tried to remind myself that I was on maternity leave and he was carrying the financial burden. But God, I was drowning. Being a nurse had prepared me for a lot of things. Blood, chaos, life and death situations, but nothing prepares you for the specific exhaustion of new motherhood. The way your body isn't your own anymore, the way every cry feels like an emergency, the way you can love someone so much it physically hurts while simultaneously fantasizing about running away. Marcus started traveling more for work. At first, it was just a few days here and there. Then it became weekly trips. Then weeks at a time. "I'm doing this for you and Lily," he'd say, kissing my forehead on his way out the door while I stood there in spit-up covered pajamas, unwashed hair piled on my head, feeling like a ghost of the woman I used to be. "I'm building something for our family. Just a little while longer, and then I'll be able to cut back." That little while never came. When Lily was 6 months old, I went back to work part-time. I needed it for my sanity, but also because our finances were somehow always tight despite Marcus's supposed success. The mortgage, the car payments, the credit card bills that kept climbing, he handled all the money, told me not to worry about it, that he had everything under control. One night, I couldn't sleep and decided to do something I'd never done before. I logged into our bank account. Marcus had always handled the finances, said he was better with numbers, and I'd been happy to let him because honestly, I had enough on my plate. But something had been nagging at me. The way he'd been so cagey lately about money, the way he'd snap when I mentioned wanting to buy Lily new clothes or get that leak in the roof fixed. What I found made my blood run cold. Our savings account, the one we'd been building for years, the one that should have had over $40,000 in it, it had $873. The checking account was overdrawn. We had maxed out credit cards I didn't even know existed. And there were recurring charges I couldn't identify, hundreds of dollars going out every week to companies I'd never heard of. When Marcus got home from his latest trip, I confronted him. I didn't yell, didn't accuse, just asked quietly, "What happened to our money?" The look on his face, I'll never forget it. For just a split second, I saw something flicker there. Something cold and calculating. Then it was gone, replaced by this wounded expression, this hurt confusion that made me feel like I was the one who'd done something wrong. "I can't believe you're questioning me right now," he said, his voice tight. "Do you have any idea how hard I work? How much pressure I'm under trying to keep this family afloat while you're working part-time and I'm carrying everything?" "I'm not questioning your work ethic, Marcus. I'm asking where $40,000 went." "Investments," he said quickly. Too quickly. "I made some investments that didn't pan out. I was trying to grow our nest egg, make sure we'd be set for the future, and it backfired. I was going to tell you when I'd fixed it. I didn't want you to worry." "You didn't want me to worry, so you just lost our entire savings without mentioning it." "I didn't lose it. It's tied up. It'll come back." "Jesus, Rebecca, you've been so stressed lately, so focused on Lily. I was trying to protect you. And here's the thing that still makes me sick. I let him convince me. I let him turn it around, make me feel guilty for checking, for not trusting him enough. Because that's what narcissists do. They make you question your own reality until you don't know which way is up anymore. But I started paying more attention after that. Little things that didn't add up. The way he'd angle his phone away from me. The perfume smell on his clothes that wasn't my perfume. The mysterious client dinners that lasted until 2 a.m. The weekends he'd suddenly have to fly out for emergencies. Lily's second birthday was when things really started falling apart. I'd planned this whole party, nothing extravagant, just family and a few friends from the neighborhood, a unicorn cake I'd stayed up half the night decorating. Marcus was supposed to be there at 1 p.m. The party started at 2. He showed up at 4:30, drunk, with a hickey on his neck that he didn't even try to hide. I excused myself from the party, met him at the door, and hissed, "Are you kidding me right now? Your daughter's birthday party, and you show up drunk with someone else's lipstick on your collar." He looked down, noticed the smudge of red on his shirt, and laughed. Actually laughed. "Relax. One of the clients got a little too friendly at lunch. It doesn't mean anything. You're being paranoid." "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" "Get out of this house. Now. You're not doing this in front of our daughter, in front of our families. You're not ruining her day more than you already have." He left. I went back inside, plastered on a smile, and finished the party while my mom gave me concerned looks and Marcus's mother pretended not to notice anything was wrong. Lily, at least, was happy. She had no idea Daddy had missed her blowing out the candles, missed watching her open presents, missed everything that mattered. That night, after everyone left and Lily was in bed, I sat in our bedroom and finally admitted to myself what I'd known for a while but been too scared to acknowledge. My husband was cheating on me. Had probably been cheating on me for years. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you built your whole life around, you know this feeling. It's not just heartbreak. It's like the ground opens up beneath you and you realize you've been standing on nothing this whole time. Every memory becomes suspect. Every I love you becomes a potential lie. You start questioning everything. Was any of it real? Did he ever actually love me? Or was I just convenient? Was I always just a placeholder for whatever he really wanted? I could have left him then. I should have left him then. But I had a 2-year-old daughter, no full-time job, no savings because he drained our accounts, and despite everything, some pathetic part of me still hoped he'd change. Still believed that the man I'd married was in there somewhere, just lost and needing to find his way back to us. So I stayed. And things got worse. Over the next 3 years, I watched my marriage dissolve in slow motion. Marcus stopped pretending. He'd disappear for days at a time. He'd take calls in front of me, not even bothering to hide that he was talking to another woman. The money situation became dire. We were constantly behind on bills. I had to ask my mom to help with groceries, and Marcus acted like it was somehow my fault for spending too much. I found evidence of multiple affairs. Different women, different cities. Hotel receipts, romantic texts, emails planning secret weekends away. Each time I confronted him, he'd either deny it completely, make me feel crazy for suggesting it, or admit it and promise it was over, that he'd changed, that he loved me and Lily and would do better. He never did better. He just got better at hiding it. But the worst part wasn't the cheating. It was watching him become a stranger to our daughter. Lily, who'd once lit up whenever Daddy came home, learned to barely look up when he walked through the door. She stopped asking him to read her bedtime stories because he always said no. She stopped making him drawings at school because he never looked at them. She learned, at 5 years old, that her father's attention was something she couldn't count on. I tried to make up for it. I was both parents to her, the one who showed up to every school event, who knew all her teachers' names, who kissed her scraped knees and celebrated her victories and held her when she was scared. Marcus was just the ghost who sometimes slept in our house. Then, when Lily was 7 years old, everything changed. Marcus came home one night and announced we were moving. Not discussing it, not suggesting it, announcing it as a done deal. I got transferred, he said. Denver's played out. There's a huge opportunity in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. We're moving in 6 weeks. Jackson Hole? Marcus, that's in the middle of nowhere. My job is here, my mom is here, Lily's school. Your part-time nursing job can be replaced. Your mom can visit. Lily will adjust. This is happening, Rebecca. I need you to support me on this. I should have said no. I should have drawn a line right there and told him we weren't uprooting our entire lives for his career when he'd given us nothing but pain and betrayal. But I was so tired. So worn down. And some delusional part of me thought maybe a fresh start would fix us, would give us a chance to rebuild. So we moved to Jackson Hole. And that's where I met Vanessa Hart, the woman who would eventually stand next to my husband and help him push me off a cliff. Jackson Hole was beautiful in that way that feels almost aggressive, like the mountains and valleys and endless sky are too much, too perfect, like you're living inside a postcard instead of real life. We'd moved into a rental house on the outskirts of town, smaller than our place in Colorado, with a view of the Tetons that should have taken my breath away but mostly just made me feel isolated. I'd managed to get a position at St. John's Medical Center, 3 12-hour shifts a week in the pediatric unit. Lily started 3rd grade at a small elementary school where everyone knew everyone, and where being the new kid made her even quieter than she'd already become. And Marcus started working for a medical device company, supposedly, though I never quite understood what he actually did all day. What he did do, I learned later, was Vanessa. I met her at a company barbecue 3 months after we moved. Marcus's company was having this big summer event, families invited, trying to build that corporate culture camaraderie that always feels forced. I almost didn't go. Lily had a cold and I was exhausted from a stretch of overnight shifts. But Marcus insisted. "You never want to do anything with me anymore," he said, and the irony of that statement coming from him would have been funny if it wasn't so infuriating. One afternoon. "That's all I'm asking. Let people meet my family." So we went. And that's where I first saw her. Vanessa Hart was everything I wasn't. Tall, at least 5'9", with legs that went on forever and the kind of effortless style that made my Target sundress feel like a burlap sack. She had perfectly highlighted blonde hair, one of those heart-shaped faces that looked good from every angle, and a body that screamed personal trainer and disciplined eating. She was 26 years old, I learned later. 8 years younger than me. Fresh and energetic and uncomplicated by things like stretch marks and C-section scars and the weight of keeping a family together. Marcus introduced us. "Rebecca, this is Vanessa Hart. She's new to the team, just moved here from Los Angeles. Vanessa, my wife Rebecca, and our daughter Lily." Vanessa smiled at me with teeth so white they were probably veneers. "It's so nice to meet you. Marcus talks about you and Lily all the time. You're a nurse, right? That's amazing. I could never do what you do. I'm way too squeamish around blood." She laughed, this tinkling little laugh that probably sounded charming to everyone else but made me want to throw my potato salad in her face. Not because she'd done anything wrong, at least not that I knew of yet, but because of the way Marcus was looking at her. The way he'd used to look at me, back when I was the one who made him smile like that. "Nice to meet you too," I said, keeping my voice pleasant while my stomach twisted into knots. She crouched down to Lily's level. "And you must be Lily. Your dad says you're really good at art. Do you like to draw?" Lily, who hadn't said 2 words all afternoon, just nodded and pressed closer to my leg. "She's shy," I explained, running my hand through Lily's hair. "That's okay. I was shy when I was her age too." Vanessa straightened up, her hand briefly touching Marcus's arm in a way that seemed casual but lingered just a fraction too long. "Well, I'll let you guys enjoy the barbecue. Maybe we can grab coffee sometime, Rebecca? It's hard making friends in a new place." "Sure," I lied. Over the next few months, I watched my husband fall in love with someone else right in front of me. He'd come home talking about Vanessa constantly. Vanessa had this great idea for the Portland account. "Vanessa ran a marathon last weekend. Can you believe it? Vanessa thinks we should try that new restaurant downtown." I started making excuses not to attend company events. I couldn't stomach watching them together, the way they gravitate toward each other, the inside jokes I wasn't part of, the energy between them that was so obvious I was shocked no one else seemed to notice. Or maybe they did notice and just didn't care, or didn't think it was their place to say anything to the sad wife in the corner watching her marriage dissolve. The night I confirmed what I already knew, Lily was staying over at her friend Emma's house, the first real friend she'd made in Jackson Hole, and I'd been so relieved she was finally coming out of her shell that I'd eagerly said yes to the sleepover. Marcus said he was working late. I decided to surprise him, ordered his favorite pizza, put on one of the dresses he used to love seeing me in, tried to recapture something, anything, of what we'd once had. I showed up at his office building at 8 p.m. The parking lot was mostly empty except for his Mercedes and one other car, a white Tesla with a Neymaster bumper sticker. His office lights were on. I could see the glow from the parking lot as I got out of my car, carrying the pizza box, feeling stupid and desperate and hopeful all at once. Then I saw them through the window. They were kissing. Not a friendly kiss, not a oops this was a mistake kiss, but a deep, passionate, I've been waiting all day for this kiss. His hands were in her hair. Her arms were around his neck. They were pressed against his desk, and even from the parking lot I could see the way their bodies moved together with the familiarity of people who'd done this many, many times before. I stood there for 5 full minutes, just watching, the pizza growing cold in my hands. I watched him kiss her neck. I watched her laugh at something he whispered in her ear. I watched her start unbuttoning his shirt. And I watched my heart finally completely break. I didn't storm in. I didn't cause a scene. I just got back in my car, drove home, and ate the entire pizza by myself while crying so hard I almost threw up. When Marcus came home at midnight, I was waiting in the living room. "How was work?" I asked calmly. "Exhausting. The Peterson account is a nightmare. I'm beat, gonna head to bed." "I brought pizza to your office tonight. Around 8. He froze. Just for a second, but I saw it. Then he recovered, his face rearranging itself into confused innocence. "Oh yeah? I must have been in a meeting. Did you leave it at reception?" "No, Marcus. I saw you. Through the window. With Vanessa." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I could see him calculating, trying to figure out how much I'd seen, what he could get away with denying. Finally, he sighed. Not a guilty sigh, not an apologetic sigh, but an irritated sigh, like I was inconveniencing him by catching him in an affair. "Look, I didn't want you to find out like this." "Find out what? That you're sleeping with your coworker? That you've been lying to me for months? That every business trip, every late night, every time you couldn't be bothered to show up for your daughter, you were with her?" "It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Marcus? Explain it to me. Make it make sense." He sat down, ran his hands through his hair, and for a moment I thought he might actually apologize, might actually show some remorse. Instead, he said, "I love her." Those 3 words hit harder than any of the rest of it. I'd prepared myself for him to say it was just sex, just a mistake, just a midlife crisis. But love? That meant this wasn't temporary. That meant I'd already been replaced. "You love her," I repeated numbly. "I didn't mean for it to happen. But yes, I love her. And I think I want a divorce." There it was. After 8 years of marriage, after promising to love me forever, after building a life and creating a child together, he was throwing me away for a 26-year-old with a tight body and no baggage. If you're listening to this and you've been through something similar, I want you to hit that subscribe button right now. Because we're going to get through this story together, and I promise you, this isn't where it ends. Not by a long shot. Check the description box for more stories like this. Stories about women who refuse to let the people who hurt them win. The divorce proceedings started immediately. Marcus moved out within a week, moved right in with Vanessa into this gorgeous cabin on the mountain that he somehow had money to afford despite claiming for years we were broke. That's when I started digging into our finances for real, and that's when I discovered the full extent of his theft. He'd been siphoning money from our joint accounts for 5 years. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. He'd opened credit cards in my name that I didn't know about and maxed them out. He'd taken out a second mortgage on our house in Colorado that I'd never signed for. He'd forged my signature. We were over $200,000 in debt, and I'd had no idea. When I showed all of this to my divorce lawyer, she whistled low. "This is financial abuse. We can press charges if you want." "I want him to pay for everything," I said. "Everything he's done. Everything he's taken. I want him destroyed." She looked at me sympathetically. "I understand. But these cases are complicated. He'll claim the debt was for household expenses, that you benefited from it too. And unless we can prove the forged signature, which is hard to do after several years, it's going to be an uphill battle." She was right. The divorce dragged on for a year. A full year of fighting over every asset, every debt, every detail of custody. Marcus fought me on everything out of spite. He wanted 50-50 custody of Lily despite barely having seen her in years. He claimed I was an unfit mother, actually said in a court filing that my mental instability and inability to maintain stable employment made me a danger to our child. The man who destroyed our finances, abandoned his daughter, and cheated with a woman young enough to be his little sister was calling me unfit. Lily, through all of this, became smaller and quieter. She was 8 years old, going on 9, and she'd started having nightmares. She'd wet the bed for the first time in years. She'd started seeing a therapist who said she was exhibiting signs of anxiety and depression. My baby was breaking, and there was nothing I could do to protect her from the war her father had declared on our family. The worst part was the court-ordered visits. Every other weekend, I had to hand my daughter over to Marcus and Vanessa, watch her climb into their car with her little overnight bag, her face pale and anxious. She never wanted to go. She'd beg me, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't make me go, Mommy. Please. I want to stay with you." But the court said I had to. Said she needed her father. Said I couldn't keep them apart just because I was angry about the divorce. If only they'd known what was really going on in that cabin. If only I'd known. Maybe I could have stopped what happened before it was too late. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in February, almost exactly a year after Marcus asked for it. I got primary custody of Lily. He got visitation every other weekend and one weeknight dinner per week. The house went to him. I couldn't afford to buy him out, and we needed to sell it anyway to cover the debt. I got half the money after the sale, which amounted to about $18,000 after everything was paid off. 8 years of marriage, and I walked away with barely enough for a deposit on a new place. Marcus married Vanessa 3 months later. I found out from Lily, who came home from her weekend visit with a party favor bag and told me they'd had a surprise wedding at the cabin with like 100 people there. She said it matter-of-factly, like she was telling me what they'd had for lunch, but I could see the confusion in her eyes. The hurt that she hadn't been important enough to know about beforehand, hadn't been asked to be part of it, had just been informed that her father now had a new wife and that was that. "How do you feel about it, sweetheart?" I asked carefully. We were sitting on the couch in our new apartment, a small 2-bedroom place in town that was all I could afford. Lily shrugged, picking at a loose thread on her jeans. "I don't know. Vanessa's okay, I guess. She tries really hard to be nice to me." "That's good. But you know you don't have to like her if you don't want to, right? Your feelings are valid no matter what they are." "I know." She was quiet for a moment, then, "Can I tell you something?" "Always. You can tell me anything." Vanessa gives me weird vibes sometimes. Like she's pretending to be nice but she's actually annoyed I'm there. "And Dad?" She trailed off. "What about Dad?" "He's different. I don't know how to explain it. Like he's playing pretend that we're this happy family, but I don't think he actually wants me there. I think he just has to have me because the judge said so." My heart shattered hearing my 9-year-old daughter articulate what I'd suspected but hoped wasn't true. "Oh, baby. I'm so sorry. You know that's not about you, right? That's about Dad's issues, not about you being lovable or wanted." She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe me. How do you convince a child they're worthy of love when their own father keeps proving otherwise? The visits continued, and over the next several months, I started noticing changes in Lily. She'd come home from Marcus's place quieter than usual. She'd flinch at loud noises. Once, I noticed bruises on her arm, and when I asked about them, she said she'd fallen. But something about the way she said it, the way she wouldn't meet my eyes, made my maternal instinct scream. I took pictures of the bruises. Took her to her pediatrician, who noted them in her chart. Asked Lily directly, "Is someone hurting you at your dad's house?" "No," she said quickly. Too quickly. "I just fell, Mommy. I'm clumsy." I wanted to push harder, wanted to demand the truth, but I also knew that pressing too hard could make her shut down completely. So I did what every protective mother does. I documented everything and I watched. I watched her like a hawk, noting every change, every new fear, every sign that something was wrong. The nightmares got worse. She'd wake up screaming 3 or 4 times a week. "The mountain," she'd sob into my shoulder. "I don't want to go to the mountain." "What mountain, baby? What happens on the mountain?" But she could never articulate it, or wouldn't. She'd just cry until she fell back asleep, and in the morning, she wouldn't remember the nightmare at all. I called Marcus. "Something's going on with Lily. The nightmares, the anxiety, It's getting worse, and it seems connected to her visits with you. I think we need to talk about adjusting the schedule until we figure out what's triggering her. She's fine at our house, he said dismissively. This is just you trying to keep her from me. The nightmares are probably because you're putting ideas in her head about me being a bad father. I would never do that. Marcus, I'm serious. Something is wrong. Yeah, something is wrong. You're a bitter ex-wife who can't handle that I've moved on and I'm happy. Leave us alone, Rebecca. We'll see you for pickup on Friday. He hung up, and I sat there with the phone in my hand, feeling helpless and furious and terrified all at once. I started keeping a journal, writing down everything Lily told me, every observation, every concern. Her therapist, Dr. Monica Chen, told me that Lily was showing signs of trauma but wouldn't open up about the source. Something is definitely happening, Dr. Chen said in one of our private sessions. But until Lily feels safe enough to talk about it, we're treating symptoms without addressing the cause. What if she's being abused? I asked, the words tasting like poison in my mouth. That's certainly one possibility. But children often protect their abusers, especially when it's a parent. They're afraid of the consequences, afraid of not being believed, afraid of making things worse. All we can do is continue creating a safe space for her and hope she'll eventually tell us what's happening. Hope. That was all I had. Hope and a growing sense of dread that something terrible was coming. Then, 2 months before the Cliff incident, Lily said something that should have been my final warning. We were baking cookies together on a Sunday afternoon, her favorite thing to do when she was feeling anxious, something about the ritual of measuring and mixing that calmed her down. Out of nowhere, while pressing cookie cutters into dough, she said, "Mommy, what happens when you die?" My hand froze mid-reach for the flour. That's a big question, sweetie. What made you think about that? I don't know. I think about it sometimes. Like, if something happened to you, where would I go? Nothing's going to happen to me. I'm healthy and I'm careful and I plan on being around for a very, very long time. But what if something did happen? Would I have to live with Dad and Vanessa forever? The fear in her voice when she said that was unmistakable. Not just childish worry, but genuine terror. Lily, has someone said something to you? About something happening to me? She looked up at me with those big brown eyes, Marcus's eyes, unfortunately, and I could see her struggling with something. Wanting to tell me but being afraid to. Finally, she just shook her head. No. I'm just wondering. I pulled her into a hug, this 9-year-old girl who was carrying weight no child should carry. I love you more than anything in this world. And I promise you, I'm not going anywhere. Okay. Okay, Mommy. But she didn't sound convinced. That night, after she was asleep, I sent Marcus an email. I'd learned not to call him because he'd just dismiss me, but email gave me a paper trail. I wrote, *Marcus, Lily is exhibiting increasingly concerning behavior. She's having nightmares about mountains, she's asking about death, and she's clearly afraid of something. I'm asking you one more time, is something happening during her visits that I need to know about? If there's any chance Vanessa is being inappropriate with her, or if something else is going on, you need to tell me. This is about our daughter's safety and well-being. His response came the next morning. You're being paranoid and dramatic. Lily is fine. Stop projecting your issues onto our daughter. If you continue to make baseless accusations, I'll be forced to take you back to court for parental alienation. Parental alienation. The favorite weapon of abusive fathers everywhere. Accuse the protective mother of turning the child against them, make it legally dangerous for her to voice concerns. I wanted to scream. But I had no proof. Just a mother's intuition and a traumatized child who wouldn't or couldn't tell me what was wrong. So I did the only thing I could do. I held her tighter, I documented everything, and I prayed I was wrong. I wasn't wrong. I was just too late. The weekend of the incident started like all the others. Friday afternoon, Marcus picked up Lily from school. I wasn't there because I was working a shift, but Lily texted me from his car. Asterisk love you mommy. See you Sunday. Asterisk. I texted back. Asterisk love you more, baby girl. Have fun. Call me if you need anything. Asterisk. She responded with a heart emoji. That was the last normal communication I had with my daughter before our lives changed forever. Saturday came and went. I worked another shift, came home exhausted, ordered takeout, watched bad TV, and tried not to think about how empty the apartment felt without Lily. Sunday morning, I woke up to my phone ringing. It was 8 a.m., and the caller ID said Marcus Sell. Hello. Hey. His voice sounded strained. Change of plans. Vanessa and I want to take Lily on a hike today, up to Inspiration Point. It's supposed to be beautiful weather, and we thought it'd be a nice family outing. We'll bring her back around dinner time instead of noon. That okay? Something about it felt off. Marcus never asked permission for anything, never called to inform me of changes. He'd just do what he wanted and tell me after the fact. And the way he said family outing felt pointed, like he was making a statement. I guess that's fine, I said slowly. But Lily's not a huge fan of heights, so maybe don't go anywhere too steep. She'll be fine. She needs to get over that fear anyway. Builds character. He hung up before I could respond. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling, told myself I was just being overprotective. But I couldn't settle into anything. I cleaned the apartment, went to the grocery store, checked my phone obsessively for texts from Lily. Nothing came. By 6 p.m., they still weren't back. I called Marcus. Straight to voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. Texted. Asterisk is everything okay? You said dinner time. Asterisk. No response. 7 p.m. 8 p.m. I was starting to panic, calling every 10 minutes, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. Marcus, this isn't funny. Bring my daughter home. Call me back. Where are you? At 8:47 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Is this Rebecca Torres? A man's voice. Official. Serious. Yes. Who is this? This is Sergeant David Kim with the Teton County Search and Rescue. I need you to stay calm. Your daughter, Lily Coleman, has been found injured on the Inspiration Point Trail. She's being airlifted to St. John's Medical Center right now. The world tilted. What? What happened? Is she okay? She's conscious and stable, but she has multiple injuries from a fall. We found her about 3 hours ago after a hiker reported seeing what looked like bodies at the bottom of a cliff. I need to ask you, were you supposed to be on this hike as well? What? No, wait, bodies? Plural. We found your daughter and you at the scene. You've both been transported to St. John's. Can you get there? I'm at St. John's. I work there. I'm coming right now. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely end the call. None of this made sense. I wasn't on any hike. I'd been home all day. How could they have found me at the bottom of a cliff? I ran to my car, drove to the hospital in a blur, my mind racing through impossible scenarios. When I got to the ER, they directed me to a trauma bay where I found Lily, my baby, lying in a hospital bed with a neck brace, her face scraped and swollen, her arm in a temporary splint, blood matted in her hair. Lily! I rushed to her side, and her eyes flew open, wide and terrified. Mommy! Her voice was small, confused. But they said you were hurt too. I'm fine, baby. I'm right here. What happened? That's when a nurse I didn't know appeared with a wheelchair. Mrs. Torres? I'm sorry, but you need to be checked out too. You were found at the scene with significant injuries. I wasn't at any scene. I've been home all day. She looked at me strangely. You were unconscious when they brought you in about an hour ago. You were in Trauma Bay 3. You have a head injury and suspected internal bleeding. I'm taking you for a CT scan right now. That's impossible. I'm standing right here talking to you. I'm fine. The nurse's expression shifted from concern to alarm. She called for security and a doctor, and suddenly I was surrounded by people trying to convince me I'd been in an accident I definitely hadn't been in, that I'd been found at the bottom of a cliff I'd never been to. That's when Lily said something that made my blood run cold. "Mommy, the woman they brought in who looks like you, that wasn't you." And suddenly, I understood. Not everything, not yet, but enough to know that whatever had happened on that mountain, it was so much worse than a simple hiking accident. Someone who looked like me had been pushed off a cliff with my daughter. And Marcus and Vanessa were nowhere to be found. The hospital was in chaos trying to figure out what was happening. I was standing there, perfectly healthy, while somewhere in the trauma bay was a woman who looked enough like me to fool first responders in low light. The impossibility of it all was making everyone's head spin, including mine. "I need to see her," I told the nurse. "The woman they thought was me. I need to see her right now." They tried to stop me, something about protocol and active trauma care, but I pushed past them. I was a pediatric nurse. I knew this hospital inside and out, and I knew exactly where Trauma Bay 3 was. When I got there, what I saw made me physically recoil. The woman on the gurney looked like she could have been my sister. Same height, same build, similar hair color and length. Her face was destroyed, swollen, bloody, partially covered by an oxygen mask and medical equipment. But I could see enough. Enough to understand why, from a distance, in fading daylight, at the bottom of a ravine, someone might mistake her for me. "Who is she?" I demanded to the trauma doctor working on her. "We don't know." No ID was found at the scene. We were told she was Rebecca Torres based on the child's information. "Do you know this woman?" "No. I've never seen her before in my life." But even as I said it, something nagged at me. Something familiar I couldn't quite place. A detective appeared, Detective Sarah Morrison, Teton County Sheriff's Department. She looked exhausted, like she'd been called in from home and was trying to make sense of a situation that defied all logic. "Ms. Torres, I need to ask you some questions. Your daughter said you were on this hike with her, her father, and her stepmother. But you're clearly not the woman we recovered from the scene. Can you explain what's going on?" "I have no idea. I wasn't on any hike. I was home all day. I can prove it. I have neighbors who probably saw me, my GPS location data, security cameras in my building." "And this woman?" She gestured to the trauma bay. "Any idea who she is or why she'd be with your daughter?" "None. But I'll tell you what I think happened." My voice was shaking, adrenaline and rage making me tremble. "I think my ex-husband planned to kill me and make it look like an accident. I think he somehow got this woman to stand in for me, and I think he pushed her and our daughter off a cliff. And when you find Marcus Coleman and Vanessa Hart, I think you're going to discover they're trying to flee the state." Detective Morrison's expression shifted from confused to cop mode. "That's a serious accusation. Check the scene. Check their stories. And check on my daughter, because whatever she saw on that mountain is going to tell you everything you need to know." They wouldn't let me talk to Lily immediately. She was being treated for a broken arm, multiple contusions, a mild concussion, and shock. But through the window of her room, I could see her crying, calling for me, and it took every ounce of self-control not to burst in there and hold her. The woman who looked like me died 2 hours later. Massive internal bleeding, severe head trauma, multiple broken bones. The doctor said she probably never regained consciousness after the fall. She died thinking she was helping someone, I later learned. Died as a pawn in my ex-husband's murder plot. At midnight, they finally let me sit with Lily. She was groggy from pain medication, her arm in a cast, her face pale and tear-streaked. When she saw me, she started sobbing so hard the monitors started beeping alarms. "Mommy, I thought you were dead. I thought I saw." "Sure, baby, I'm here. I'm alive. I'm okay. You're okay. We're both okay. But the lady." I know. But that wasn't me, sweetheart. I need you to tell me everything that happened today. Can you do that? She nodded, sniffling, and what came out of her mouth over the next 30 minutes was so horrifying that I had to keep reminding myself to breathe, to stay calm, to not let her see how close I was to falling apart. It started Friday night. Marcus had picked her up from school as planned, but instead of going to his cabin, he'd driven to a hotel. Lily thought that was weird, but he said they were going to have a special adventure weekend and Vanessa would meet them later. Saturday morning, a woman showed up at the hotel. She looked like me, or at least, similar enough that in the moment, Lily was confused. I thought maybe you decided to come on the trip after all, Lily said. But something was wrong. She talked different than you. And she smelled different. And when I called her mommy, she looked uncomfortable. Marcus had introduced the woman as his friend Rachel, who was going to join them on a hike. Vanessa showed up an hour later, and the four of them drove up to the Inspiration Point Trail. I didn't want to go, Lily said, her voice getting smaller. I told Dad I wanted to go home, that I didn't feel good. But he said I was being difficult and I needed to stop whining. Vanessa kept giving Rachel these weird looks, like she was nervous about something. They hiked for about an hour, getting deeper into the trail, going up toward a viewpoint that overlooked a steep ravine. Lily said the whole time, she felt like something bad was going to happen. That instinct kids have when danger is near, she felt it in her bones. When they got to a particular spot on the trail, a narrow path with a cliff drop-off on one side, Marcus suddenly said, Rachel, why don't you and Lily go ahead and check out the view? We'll catch up. Rachel, the woman who looked like me, had taken Lily's hand and walked ahead about 20 feet. Lily said she heard Marcus and Vanessa talking in low, urgent voices behind them. Then she heard footsteps running, and before she could turn around, she felt hands on her back and Rachel's back, shoving them both forward. They went over the edge. I grabbed onto a branch, Lily said, her voice hollow with trauma. Just like, my fingers caught it and I was hanging there. And I could hear Rachel falling, hitting rocks, screaming. And then she stopped screaming. And I looked up and saw Dad and Vanessa looking down at me. If you've stayed with me this far, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound impossible. It's going to sound like fiction. But every word is true, documented, and verified. If this story is making you feel something, anger, fear, disbelief, drop a comment right now. Tell me you're here. Because we're about to get to the part where everything changes. And make sure you've subscribed, because this story doesn't end the way you think it does. Check the description below for more true stories about survival, revenge, and justice. Lily said she was hanging there, her arms screaming in pain, her fingers slipping, certain she was about to fall and die like Rachel. She looked up at her father, the man who was supposed to protect her above all else, and he just stared down at her with no expression. Like he was watching a bug struggle. Vanessa said, "She's still alive. Do something." And Marcus said, "Give it a minute. She'll fall." My 10-year-old daughter heard her father say those words. Heard him deciding to let her die. But then Lily did something that saved her life. She let go of the branch with one hand and grabbed onto a root lower down, making herself drop slightly and disappear from their view. She wedged herself into a small crevice in the rock face and stayed absolutely still. "I heard them talking," she said. "Dad said, she's gone. Come on, we need to get out of here before someone sees us." Vanessa said, "Are you sure? What if?" And Dad said, "She fell. It's done. Rachel's dead, Lily's dead. Rebecca gets blamed for bringing our daughter on a dangerous hike that killed them both. It's perfect. Let's go." They left. Just walked away from the cliff where they thought their daughter's body lay next to the woman they'd used as a decoy. Lily had clung to that rock face for 3 hours. 3 hours, injured and terrified, before a hiker heard her crying and called for help. By the time search and rescue got there, it was almost dark. They'd found Rachel's body first, then found Lily, still wedged in the rocks, semi-conscious from pain and shock. When the rescuers asked Lily what happened, she was smart enough, even through trauma, to say, "We fell." It was an accident. I don't remember anything else. Because she knew. Even at 10 years old, she knew that if Marcus thought she'd survived and could tell the truth, he'd find a way to finish the job. The doctor examining her said, "Your daughter is incredibly brave. The way she protected herself, the way she stayed calm and quiet, that kind of survival instinct is remarkable." Survival instinct. That's what you develop when your own father tries to murder you. Detective Morrison came in while Lily was finally sleeping, sedated and restless. "We've issued a bolo for Marcus Coleman and Vanessa Hart. Their phones are off, their car isn't at their residence, and according to neighbors, they left in a hurry this afternoon with suitcases. We've alerted Border Patrol and airport security. We'll find them." "What about Rachel? The woman they used?" "We're running her fingerprints and DNA. So far, no hits in any database. But we found her car at a trailhead about 2 miles from where you were found. Registration shows it's a rental from the Jackson Hole Airport, rented Friday afternoon under the name Rachel Morrison. Obviously a fake ID. The credit card was prepaid and untraceable. My theory: your ex hired her, probably found someone who resembled you and paid her to participate in what she thought was something else entirely. Maybe told her it was a prank, or a surprise, or he told her it was me who needed to disappear, and she'd be helping keep me safe," I said, the pieces clicking together. "He's that manipulative. He could have spun any story. We'll figure it out. In the meantime, I need you to think. Is there anywhere Marcus might go? Family, friends, properties you might not know about?" I thought about it. Marcus's parents were dead, his mother from cancer 5 years ago, his father from a heart attack 3 years before that. He had a sister in Arizona he hadn't spoken to in years. His friends were all superficial, work connections that wouldn't hide a fugitive. "Check his bank accounts," I said. "He's been siphoning money for years. If he planned this, he's been preparing. Offshore accounts, cash withdrawals, fake identities, he's thorough when it comes to covering his tracks. We're already on it. Financial crimes is pulling everything." Over the next 48 hours, the story came together. Marcus and Vanessa had been planning this for months. He'd taken out $1 million life insurance policy on me 6 months earlier, forged my signature, claimed I'd signed it during a family financial planning session. If I died in a hiking accident with our daughter, he'd get the payout plus full control of Lily's trust fund from my parents. But Lily wasn't supposed to survive. That was the flaw in his perfect plan. She was supposed to die too. Tragic accident. Father loses wife and child. Everyone feels sorry for him. He walks away rich and free to start his new life with Vanessa. They found Rachel's real identity through dental records. Her name was Rachel Morrison, Detective Morrison's distant cousin, which was a coincidence that made everyone uncomfortable. She was a 36-year-old struggling actress from Los Angeles who'd responded to an ad on Craigslist looking for someone to participate in a documentary about look-alike strangers. Marcus had paid her $5,000 cash to come to Jackson Hole for the weekend. She'd thought she was being filmed for a YouTube project. She died thinking she was helping create content. Instead, she was murdered as part of an insurance fraud scheme. They found Marcus and Vanessa 3 days later, trying to cross into Mexico at a less monitored border point near Lukeville, Arizona. They had fake passports, over $300,000 in cash, and a detailed plan to disappear into Central America. When Border Patrol agents approached their vehicle, Marcus tried to run. They tasked him in a Walmart parking lot while Vanessa sat in the car crying, insisting she didn't know anything, that Marcus had told her I'd attacked them and they were fleeing for their safety. Nobody believed her. The evidence was overwhelming. Lily's testimony was damning. The paper trail of the insurance policy, the fake IDs, the premeditated planning, it all pointed to first-degree murder and attempted murder. But here's where the story gets interesting. Here's where my revenge really begins. Because Marcus made one crucial mistake. He underestimated his daughter. And he catastrophically underestimated me. Lily came home from the hospital after 5 days. Her arm was in a cast that would need to stay on for 6 weeks. She had nightmares that made the previous ones look like pleasant dreams. And she had information that would destroy her father's life more thoroughly than any prison sentence ever could. The night she came home, after I'd settled her into bed with her favorite stuffed elephant and sat with her until she fell asleep, she woke up an hour later and found me in the living room going through boxes of documents. Financial records, emails I'd printed, phone logs I'd subpoenaed through my divorce attorney who'd become more like a friend through all of this. "Mommy, what are you doing?" "Just some paperwork, baby. Go back to sleep." Instead, she came and sat next to me on the couch, her casted arm resting awkwardly on her lap. "Are you trying to make sure Dad goes to jail forever?" The bluntness of the question startled me. "I'm trying to make sure he faces consequences for what he did, yes." "Good. Because there's more. More than what I told the police." My head snapped toward her. "What do you mean?" "I didn't tell them everything. I was scared. But I'm ready now." What came out of my daughter's mouth over the next 2 hours was so calculated, so evil, that I actually had to run to the bathroom and throw up halfway through. When I came back, shaking, Lily was still sitting there calmly, and I realized that she'd been carrying this weight alone for so long that finally sharing it was actually bringing her relief. She told me about the weekends at Marcus and Vanessa's cabin. How they'd lock her in her room for hours while they did God knows what. How Vanessa would make comments about how inconvenient it was having Lily there, how she was ruining their alone time, how she wished Marcus had never had children. How Marcus would tell Lily to her face that she was a burden, that he only took her because the court made him, that he'd be happier if she just disappeared. She told me about overhearing phone conversations. Marcus talking to someone about taking care of the Rebecca problem. Vanessa researching life insurance policies on her laptop while Lily pretended to be asleep on the couch. Marcus printing out fake documents and practicing my signature over and over until he got it right. "I saw him practice your name like 100 times, Lily said. "He had this piece of paper with your real signature at the top, and he'd trace it and copy it until it looked exactly like yours. I asked him why, and he said he was helping you with paperwork for the divorce. But it felt wrong." She told me about a woman who came to the cabin once, tall, thin, with brown hair like mine. Marcus had introduced her as Aunt Rachel and said she was an old friend visiting. But Lily had noticed how uncomfortable Rachel looked, how she kept glancing at Lily like she was confused about something. Vanessa had pulled Rachel into another room and they talked for a long time with the door closed. "I listened at the door," Lily admitted. "Vanessa was telling Rachel about you. Showing her pictures. Rachel kept saying, 'I don't know about this, it feels weird.' And Vanessa said, 'It's just for a day. You're helping Marcus play a prank on his ex-wife. She'll think it's funny when she finds out. Plus, $5,000 for 1 day of work is great money, right?' Rachel had been groomed weeks before the actual murder attempt. They'd been setting this up, testing her, making sure she'd go along with it. And poor Rachel, desperate for money, had believed their lies until it was too late. But the worst part, the part that made me want to dig up Marcus from whatever hole he was hiding in and personally end him, was what Lily told me next. "Mom, the night before the hike, Dad sat me down and told me that you were planning to take me away. That you were going to run away with me somewhere he could never find us, and that he couldn't let that happen because he loved me too much. He said the hike was actually a plan to protect me from you." "He what?" "He said you were dangerous. That you'd been threatening him. That the woman who looked like you was going to pretend to be you so he could prove you were stalking him. He said I needed to play along, act scared when I saw her, and then after the hike, everything would go back to normal and you wouldn't be able to bother us anymore." The manipulation was so layered, so sick, that I could barely process it. He'd been priming Lily to accept seeing someone who looked like me. He'd been setting up a narrative where I was the villain. And if his plan had worked, if both Lily and Rachel had died, he could have claimed I'd gone insane and caused the accident that killed our daughter. "But I knew he was lying," Lily continued. "Because you'd never take me away from him without telling me. And you're not dangerous. And the whole thing felt wrong. So when we were on the hike and he pushed us, I wasn't really surprised. I was scared, but not surprised. Does that make sense? Yeah, baby. That makes perfect sense. You knew in your gut that something was wrong, and you were right. There's more. More. She nodded, and I saw the weight of what she was carrying in her eyes. Dad has another phone. A secret one. I've seen him use it. He keeps it hidden in his office at the cabin, in a drawer that's usually locked, but once I saw him put it away and he didn't lock it all the way. It's a burner phone, I think. That's what they call them in movies. He uses it to talk to someone he calls V in the contacts. But it's not Vanessa, because Vanessa's in there under her real name on his regular phone. A second woman. Of course there was. Marcus never did anything halfway when it came to betrayal. Do you remember anything else about the phone? The number, any of the messages? I took a picture of it once. She said it so calmly, like she hadn't just dropped a nuclear bomb in my lap. You what? I knew something bad was happening. I knew I might need proof someday. So one time when Dad left the office to talk to Vanessa in the other room, I ran in, found the phone, and took pictures of the screen with my tablet. I have them saved in a secret folder. My 10-year-old daughter had more investigative instincts than half the police force. She'd been documenting evidence against her own father because some part of her knew she'd need it to survive. Where's your tablet? In my backpack. Want me to get it? 20 minutes later, I was looking at photos of text messages that would add years to Marcus's prison sentence. Messages from V that included: asterisk, when this is done, we're set for life. Beach house in Costa Rica, just like we planned. Asterisk. Asterisk, make sure the insurance policy goes through. That's the key to everything. Asterisk. Asterisk, what about the kid? You sure about that part? Cold, even for you. Asterisk. Asterisk, don't get soft on me now. It has to look like an accident. Both of them. Asterisk. V wasn't Vanessa. These messages were from months before Marcus even met Vanessa. This was someone else, someone who'd been helping him plan this long before he'd even filed for divorce. I forwarded the photos to Detective Morrison immediately. Within hours, they traced the number to a prepaid phone purchased in Denver 6 months before we'd moved to Jackson Hole. And through security footage from the store where it was bought, they identified the buyer, Veronica Shaw, Marcus's former assistant at his Denver job. The woman I'd once asked him about, the one whose text had said, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." He'd been planning to kill me since before we'd even left Colorado. Before the divorce. While we were still married, still sleeping in the same bed, still pretending to be a family. He'd been setting this up for over a year. The prosecutor assigned to the case, Amanda Rodriguez, called me in for a meeting. "Mrs. Torres, your daughter's testimony and the evidence she collected changes everything. We're adding conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, identity theft, child endangerment, and about 10 other charges. Marcus Coleman is looking at life without parole. Vanessa Hart is looking at 25 to 30 years. And we're pursuing charges against Veronica Shaw as an accessory." "Good," I said flatly. "That's a start." "A start? Mrs. Torres, these are the maximum sentences we can pursue." "I know. But prison isn't enough. I want him destroyed. Financially, socially, psychologically. I want every single thing he values taken from him. I want him to live a long life behind bars knowing that he lost everything and gained nothing. Can you help me do that?" Amanda looked at me for a long moment. "I can win the criminal case. But the total destruction you're talking about? That's going to require civil litigation, media exposure, and a level of calculated vengeance that most people aren't capable of sustaining." "I'm not most people," I said. "I'm a mother whose child was almost murdered by her own father. And I'm just getting started." She smiled, a small, grim smile that told me she understood exactly what kind of war I was about to wage. "Then let me connect you with some people who can help." Over the next 2 months, while Marcus sat in jail awaiting trial and Vanessa tried desperately to make a plea deal, I built my case. Not just the criminal case, that was handled. I built a comprehensive, devastating plan to ensure that Marcus Coleman would never have a moment of peace for the rest of his miserable life. I hired a forensic accountant who traced every penny he'd stolen from me over the years. Turned out the number was closer to $300,000 when you included credit card debt, forged loans, and investments he'd made with my money without my consent. I filed a civil lawsuit for the full amount plus damages. I hired a private investigator who found 4 other women Marcus had scammed over the years, women he'd dated, moved in with, stolen from, and discarded. We compiled their stories, their evidence, and submitted everything to the prosecutor. Pattern of behavior. Serial predator. Each story made him look worse. I contacted every single person Marcus had ever worked with, every friend, every family member, and I told them exactly what he'd done. Not as gossip, as documented fact with court filings attached. I wanted everyone who'd ever shaken his hand to know they'd been touching a would-be child murderer. I reached out to Rachel Morrison's family. Her mother was devastated, broken by the loss of her daughter who'd just been trying to make some extra money. I sat with her for hours, showed her everything we knew, promised her that Marcus would pay for what he'd done to Rachel. Together, we filed a wrongful death suit that would ensure even if Marcus ever got out of prison, he'd be financially ruined for life. And then I did something that surprised even me. I started a blog. Surviving Marcus Coleman, One Mother's Journey from Victim to Victor. I documented everything. With permission from the prosecutor and my attorney, I published every detail that wasn't sealed by the court. The financial abuse. The emotional manipulation. The affairs. The insurance fraud. The murder plot. Lily's testimony, edited to protect her privacy but powerful enough to show what she'd survived. The blog went viral within a week. Local news picked it up. Then regional news. Then national. Suddenly I was getting interview requests from everyone. Morning shows, true crime podcasts, women's advocacy groups. People wanted to hear how a mother and daughter had survived a murder attempt and were fighting back. I said yes to every single one. Because the more people who knew Marcus's face, knew his name, knew what he'd done, the more his life became a cautionary tale instead of a life at all. Vanessa's family reached out to me. Her parents, mortified by their daughter's actions, wanted me to know they supported full prosecution. Her younger sister called me crying, apologizing, saying she'd always thought there was something off about Marcus but never imagined this. I told her it wasn't her fault, that predators are good at hiding what they are. But I also made sure Vanessa's employer knew exactly who they'd hired. Made sure her friends knew what she'd participated in. Made sure that her entire life collapsed just like Marcus's. Some people said I was being vindictive, that Vanessa was just a victim of Marcus's manipulation too. Those people didn't see the text messages where she suggested drugging me to make the murder easier. They didn't hear her voice on Lily's recording saying just push them both, make it look like they grabbed each other trying to save themselves. No, Vanessa wasn't a victim. She was an enthusiastic participant who'd been promised a life of luxury and had been willing to kill for it. The trial started 6 months after the Cliff incident. Marcus pleaded not guilty, claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that Rachel had been a mentally unstable woman who'd attacked them and accidentally fallen while they were trying to protect Lily. His lawyers tried to paint him as the real victim. That narrative lasted exactly until Lily took the stand. My daughter, 11 years old by then, walked into that courtroom with her head held high. She wore a simple blue dress, had her hair pulled back, and carried herself with a dignity that made me ache with pride and grief at the same time. She shouldn't have had to do this. She should have been worrying about homework and friendship drama, not testifying against her father in a murder trial. The prosecutor asked her to describe what happened that day on the mountain. And Lily, calm and clear, told the entire story. She didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. She looked directly at Marcus, who couldn't meet her eyes, and recounted every single detail of how he'd pushed her off a cliff and then walked away believing she was dead. When she got to the part about playing dead, about wedging herself into the rocks and staying silent for 3 hours while injured and terrified, I heard people in the gallery gasp. Saw the jury members' expressions shift from sympathetic to horrified to enraged. Marcus's lawyer tried to cross-examine her gently, suggesting maybe she was confused, maybe in the chaos and fear she'd misunderstood what happened. Lily just looked at him with those old, tired eyes that no child should have and said, "I know what my father did to me. I know what he said when he thought I was dying. And I know he's lying now." The lawyer gave up after 10 minutes. You can't break a child who's already been broken and put herself back together. Vanessa took a plea deal halfway through the trial, 20 years in exchange for full testimony against Marcus. She confirmed everything. The planning, the insurance fraud, the recruitment of Rachel, the decision to kill Lily too. She cried the whole time she testified, kept saying she was sorry, that she'd been manipulated and was in love and made terrible choices. The jury didn't care. You could see it on their faces. Whatever sympathy they might have had for her evaporated when they heard her admit she'd known Lily would be pushed off that cliff and had helped make it happen. Marcus was convicted on all counts. First-degree attempted murder of Lily. First-degree murder of Rachel Morrison. Conspiracy to commit murder. Insurance fraud. Child endangerment. Forgery. Theft. The list went on. At sentencing, the judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement. I stood up, walked to the podium, and looked Marcus in the eye for the first time since the arrest. "You took 8 years of my life," I said, my voice steady. "You made me doubt myself, made me feel worthless, made me believe I was the problem. You stole my money, my security, my sense of safety. But none of that compares to what you did to our daughter. You looked at the child you helped create, the little girl who loved you unconditionally, and you decided she was disposable. You pushed her off a cliff. You walked away while she clung to rocks, bleeding and terrified, and you felt nothing. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. You're not human. You're something less than that. And I'm grateful, so grateful, that you'll spend the rest of your life in a cage where you can't hurt anyone else." The judge sentenced him to life without possibility of parole, plus an additional 75 years for the other charges. Veronica Shaw got 15 years as an accessory. And Rachel Morrison's family won their wrongful death suit, $18 million in damages that Marcus would never be able to pay, but that would hang over him forever. But you know what? The legal victory wasn't enough. The jail sentence wasn't enough. Because Marcus had taken something from Lily and me that could never be given back. Our sense of safety, our ability to trust, our innocence about how dark humans can be. So I made sure the punishment continued long after the gavel came down. Prison was just the beginning for Marcus Coleman. Because I learned something important through this whole nightmare. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a single moment of justice, it's a lifetime of consequences that never stop coming. Marcus's first year in prison was rough. He'd gone from a successful pharmaceutical sales rep with a beautiful wife and a mountain cabin to an inmate in Wyoming State Penitentiary, surrounded by men who had very specific feelings about people who hurt children. Word spreads fast in prison, and Marcus's crime was the kind that makes even hardened criminals disgusted. He was attacked twice in his first 6 months. Nothing life-threatening. Prisoners know that killing him would be a mercy. Instead, they made sure he understood exactly how low he was on the prison hierarchy. He spent 2 months in protective custody, which is basically solitary confinement, before being transferred to a different facility. I knew all of this because I'd made friends with a victim's advocate who kept me updated on everything happening with Marcus's incarceration. Every disciplinary action, every incident report, every miserable detail of his new life, I wanted to know it all. But my real revenge was more subtle and so much more satisfying. Remember that blog I started? It didn't end when the trial did. I kept writing, kept documenting our healing journey, Lily's recovery, the therapy sessions, the nightmares that slowly became less frequent. I wrote about narcissistic abuse, about financial manipulation, about how to spot red flags in relationships. And I kept Marcus's face front and center. I made sure that anyone who ever Googled his name would find hundreds of pages of articles about what he'd done. Employers who might one day consider hiring him after release, they'd see it. Parole boards who might review his case, they'd see it. Future cellmates who wanted to know who they were bunking with, they'd see it. I made Marcus Coleman's name synonymous with evil, with betrayal, with the worst kind of human being imaginable. The civil lawsuits kept coming too. I'd opened a door, and suddenly other victims were coming forward with their own stories. Women he'd dated before me, women he'd scammed, employers he'd stolen from. Each lawsuit was another nail in his coffin, another judgment against him that he'd never be able to pay. By the end of the second year, Marcus Coleman was legally in debt for over $30 million. Even if he lived to be 200 and worked every single day, he'd never touch that number. His credit was destroyed. His assets, what few the court hadn't seized, were gone. He'd die in debt, die in prison, die knowing he'd lost everything. But what really satisfied me, what really made every sleepless night and every therapy session worth it, was watching Lily heal. Because that was the ultimate revenge, showing Marcus that he'd failed. His daughter, the child he'd tried to murder, was thriving despite him. Lily started trauma-focused therapy with an amazing psychologist named Dr. Patricia Hayes, who specialized in childhood trauma. The first few months were hard, lots of tears, lots of nightmares, lots of sessions where Lily couldn't even talk and just drew pictures of mountains and falling and fear. But slowly, gradually, she started to come back to herself. The real Lily, not the scared, quiet shadow she'd become during those years with Marcus. She joined an art class at school and discovered she was incredibly talented. Her teacher said she had a natural gift for expressing emotion through color and form. She started painting her feelings instead of holding them in, and the house filled with canvases, some dark and turbulent, some bright and hopeful, all of them honest. She made friends. Real friends who didn't know about the trial or her father or any of it. They just knew Lily as the funny girl who was really good at art and always had the best snacks. She had sleepovers and birthday parties and normal kid experiences that had nothing to do with trauma. She learned to rock climb, which sounds ironic given what happened, but her therapist said confronting the fear in a safe, controlled way would help her reclaim power over it. Lily took to it immediately. There was something about scaling walls with ropes and harnesses, about trusting the equipment and her own strength, that healed something deep inside her. On her 12th birthday, she told me she wanted to write a letter to her father. Not to send, just to write. Dr. Hayes had suggested it as an exercise, a way to process her feelings. I told her she could write whatever she needed to write. She showed me the letter when she was done. I'll never forget what it said. Dear Dad, I don't call you that anymore in my head, but I don't know what else to write. You're the person who was supposed to protect me, and instead you tried to kill me. That's a thing I have to live with forever. For a long time, I thought there was something wrong with me. That I'd done something to make you not love me anymore. But Dr. Hayes helped me understand that it was never about me. You're just broken in a way that can't be fixed. I hope prison is terrible. I hope every day is hard and scary and miserable. I hope you never have a moment of peace. Because that's what you deserve. But also, I want you to know that I'm okay. Better than okay. I'm happy. I have friends and hobbies and I'm good at stuff and Mom says I'm brave. I'm everything you tried to destroy, and I survived anyway. So I guess you failed. You failed as a father and as a human being and as a murderer. And I won. I don't forgive you. I won't ever forgive you. But I also don't think about you most days anymore. You're just a bad memory I'm learning to live with, like a scar that's healed but still shows. I hope you think about me every day. I hope you remember what you did and it eats you alive. Lily. She burned the letter in our fireplace, watching it curl and blacken and turn to ash. I feel lighter, she said, and she smiled, and in that moment I saw my daughter truly free for the first time in years. That was the real revenge. Not the prison sentence, not the lawsuits, not the destroyed reputation. The revenge was Lily's healing. It was her joy. It was every single moment that she lived free and happy and safe, while Marcus rotted behind bars knowing he'd lost everything that mattered. I rebuilt our lives from scratch. I went back to school and got my nurse practitioner certification, started working in pediatric trauma. Helping other kids who'd survived terrible things gave me purpose, reminded me that what happened to us wasn't unique. It was part of a larger pattern of violence that needed to be addressed. I started speaking publicly about domestic violence and financial abuse, became an advocate for victims' rights, testified before the state legislature about closing loopholes in insurance fraud laws. I turned our trauma into something that might help other people avoid similar situations. And you know what? That felt more powerful than any legal victory ever could. I also made sure to maintain connections with Rachel Morrison's family. Her mother, Patricia, and I became close, bonded through shared tragedy and a mutual need for justice. We created a foundation in Rachel's name to help struggling artists and performers, making sure her death meant something beyond just being a pawn in someone else's evil plan. Every year on the anniversary of the Cliff incident, Lily and I do something to reclaim that day. The first year, we planted a tree in Rachel's memory. The second year, we hiked a different mountain trail, a safe one, and Lily stood at a viewpoint and screamed as loud as she could, all her anger and pain echoing across the valley. The third year, we got matching tattoos, a small mountain with a bird flying over it, symbolizing freedom and survival. Each year, Marcus has been behind bars, and each year, we've been healing. But the story doesn't end there. Because recently, something happened that reminded me that revenge isn't always immediate. Sometimes it takes years to fully manifest. 3 years into his sentence, Marcus's sister Diane, who'd never visited him, never written to him, called me out of the blue. "Rebecca, this is Diane Coleman. I know we've never been close, but I need to tell you something." "I'm listening." "My brother called me collect from prison. First time he's tried to contact me since he was arrested. He wanted money for his commissary account. Said his lawyer fees had drained everything and he had nothing. And I told him." She paused, and I could hear her voice break. "I told him I hoped he rotted. That what he did to you and Lily was unforgivable, and that if I never saw him again it would be too soon. I told him he was dead to me." "Thank you for telling me," I said quietly. "There's more. He has cancer. Liver cancer. It's treatable, but the prison medical care is minimal. He's terrified. And completely alone. Every single person who ever cared about him has turned their back, and he's going to die, maybe soon, maybe in 20 years, but he's going to die knowing that not a single soul loved him at the end." I let that sink in. Marcus Coleman, who did everything, a family, a career, a future, was now dying alone, abandoned, despised by everyone who'd ever known him. "Good," I said simply. Diane laughed, a bitter, sad sound. "Yeah, that's what I thought too. I just wanted you to know. I wanted you to know that sometimes karma really does work." After we hung up, I sat with that information. And I realized that this was the final piece of revenge I'd been waiting for without even knowing it. Marcus would live out whatever time he had left, whether that was 6 months or 60 years, knowing that he was utterly, completely alone. That his daughter hated him. That his ex-wife had moved on and was thriving. That the woman he'd thrown away for Vanessa was stronger and more successful without him. He'd have years, maybe decades, to think about every choice he'd made. Every moment he'd chosen ego over love, money over family, murder over simply walking away. And he'd die knowing it was all for nothing. That's the thing about revenge. When you do it right, it doesn't end. It becomes a living thing that continues long after the initial act of justice. Every day Marcus wakes up in prison is revenge. Every moment Lily laughs and plays and lives is revenge. Every article written about him, every person who hears his story and is disgusted, every consequence that ripples out from his actions, it's all revenge. And the best part? I barely have to think about him anymore. I've given him as much of my time and energy as he deserves, and now I'm focused on the future. On Lily's future, on my career, on helping other survivors, on living a life so full and rich and joyful that it would make Marcus sick with envy if he knew. So if you're still with me, if you've listened to this entire story and you're feeling something, anger at what happened, hope for how it ended, inspiration to fight back against your own demons, do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel. Share this story. Check the description box for resources on escaping abusive relationships, on protecting yourself financially, on healing from trauma. Because this story isn't just about me and Lily. It's about everyone who's ever been betrayed, manipulated, almost destroyed, and found a way to survive anyway. Here's what they don't tell you about surviving something like this. The healing isn't linear. It doesn't happen in stages you can check off like a to-do list. Some days you're fine, functioning, even happy. Other days you're right back at the bottom of that cliff, feeling broken all over again. 4 years after the incident, I still have nightmares. Not as often, maybe once or twice a month instead of every night, but they come in waves, usually triggered by something seemingly innocuous. A news story about a hiking accident. Someone wearing cologne that smells like Marcus used to smell. The anniversary of our wedding, our divorce, the day he tried to kill us. Lily still struggles too, though she's gotten remarkably good at managing it. She's 15 now, and she's become this incredibly insightful, empathetic person, the kind of teenager who notices when her friends are struggling and actually does something about it. But she also has panic attacks sometimes, usually in tight spaces or high places, and she sees Dr. Hayes every other week without fail. The trauma changed us. We're not the same people we were before that mountain. But in some ways, that's not entirely bad. We're stronger now. More resilient. We don't take safety or love or normalcy for granted anymore. I learned things about myself through all of this. I learned I'm capable of a level of rage I didn't know existed. The kind of anger that doesn't burn hot and fade out, but smolders cold and steady for years. I learned I can be ruthless when protecting my child. I learned I'm stronger than I thought, but also more vulnerable than I wanted to admit. And I learned that revenge, real revenge, isn't about a single act of retaliation. It's about systematically dismantling someone's entire existence while building something beautiful from the ruins they left behind. The lawsuit settlement started coming in during Lily's 13th year. The wrongful death suit from Rachel's family had been settled for $18 million, which of course Marcus couldn't pay, but his assets were seized, the cabin, his cars, his bank accounts, everything. It wasn't enough to cover the judgment, not even close, but it was something. My civil suit for the years of financial abuse was settled for $280,000, the full amount he'd stolen plus interest and damages. Again, he couldn't pay it, but the judgment meant that if he ever inherited money, won the lottery, or somehow came into funds, it would go directly to paying what he owed. The IRS also came after him for tax fraud. Turns out when you're siphoning money and hiding assets, you tend to forget to report income. They hit him with nearly $100,000 in back taxes and penalties. Every single bill, every judgment, every debt was documented and filed. Marcus Coleman's name was now synonymous with financial ruin. Even if he somehow got out of prison someday, which was unlikely given his sentence but not impossible with parole reform and appeals, he'd be drowning in debt until the day he died. But money was never really the point. The point was making sure he understood, deeply and completely, that there were consequences for what he'd done. Not just legal consequences, but personal, social, psychological ones that would haunt him forever. I made sure of that through continued public speaking. I told our story everywhere I was invited: women's shelters, advocacy groups, law enforcement conferences, universities. I showed Lily's photo from before the incident, a bright, happy child, next to a photo from after, where you could see the trauma in her eyes. I explained how abusers groom their victims, how they isolate and manipulate, how they make you doubt your own reality until you can't trust yourself anymore. And I always mentioned Marcus by name. I made sure his face was attached to every presentation, every article, every interview. His mugshot was plastered on websites dedicated to exposing abusers. His story was used as a cautionary tale in criminal justice courses about domestic violence escalation. Some people criticized me for it. Said I was being vindictive, that I should move on, that publicly shaming him wasn't helping anyone heal. Those people could go to hell, frankly, because they weren't the ones who'd been pushed off a cliff. They weren't the ones who'd had to watch their child testify about how her father tried to murder her. They didn't understand that exposing Marcus, keeping his crimes in the public consciousness, was the only way to ensure that other women might recognize the warning signs before they ended up married to their own monster. I also learned something unexpected about Vanessa. Through the victim's advocate, I found out that her 20-year sentence was actually doing something I hadn't anticipated. It was rehabilitating her. Vanessa, unlike Marcus, showed genuine remorse. She took full responsibility for her actions in her parole hearings. She participated in every therapy program available. She reached out to victims' advocacy groups and asked if there was anything she could do to help other women avoid the mistakes she'd made. 5 years into her sentence, she wrote me a letter. It came through my lawyer first, protocol for victims who might not want direct contact. My lawyer asked if I wanted to read it or just have it destroyed. I read it. Dear Rebecca, I know you have no reason to read this, and even less reason to care about what I have to say. I know that sorry isn't enough, that it doesn't even begin to cover what I participated in. But I need to try anyway. I was 26 when I met Marcus. I was young and ambitious, and I thought I was smart enough to not get manipulated. I thought I could spot a predator. I was wrong about all of it. Marcus groomed me just like he groomed you, just like he probably groomed every woman in his life. He made me feel special, chosen, like I was different from everyone else. He told me you were crazy, that you were trying to take everything from him, that you'd threatened to make false accusations. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. But here's the thing, and this is not an excuse, just an explanation. I knew something was wrong. Deep down, I knew. When he started talking about insurance policies and accidents and getting rid of problems, I knew it wasn't just talk. And I went along with it anyway because I was selfish and greedy, and I convinced myself that you were the villain in the story he was telling. When we pushed you and Lily off that cliff, when I helped push you, I remember feeling this moment of absolute horror at what we were doing. And then I pushed it down because it was too late to back out and I was already guilty. I chose to be a monster that day. I chose it. Lily survived, and I thank God every day for that. Not for me, I don't deserve forgiveness or redemption, but for her. Because that little girl deserved to live and grow up and have a future. And Rachel. God. Rachel. She was an innocent person who thought she was helping with some stupid documentary project. She died because I helped lure her into Marcus's plan. That's on me. That will always be on me. I'm in prison now, and I'll be here for a long time. Probably until I'm almost 50. And I'm glad. Because I deserve to be here. I deserve to lose my 20s and 30s and maybe my 40s to these walls. What I did was unforgivable. But I also want you to know that I've changed. I've spent 5 years in therapy, really digging into why I was willing to participate in something so evil. Why I valued money and comfort more than human life. Why I chose Marcus over my own conscience. I've helped other women in here recognize abusive patterns. I've talked to at-risk youth about the consequences of choosing the wrong person. I've written victim impact statements for other cases, explaining how abusers manipulate their accomplices. It doesn't undo what I did, but maybe it prevents someone else from making my mistakes. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even think you should. But I wanted you to know that what happened on that mountain destroyed me too. Not in the same way, I know that. But it destroyed the person I thought I was and forced me to confront the person I'd actually become. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be better than that. I hope you and Lily are healing. I hope you're both living beautiful lives full of joy and safety and love. You deserve that. She deserves that. I'm truly sorry for the role I played in your trauma. I'm sorry for the nightmares and the pain and the fear. I'm sorry I chose to be a monster when I could have chosen to be a human being. I'll carry that guilt forever. Vanessa Hart. I read that letter 3 times. And then I did something I didn't expect to do. I wrote back. Not because I forgave her. I didn't. Maybe I never would. But because there was power in telling her directly, in my own words, what she'd taken from us and what we'd built despite her. I told her about Lily's nightmares, about the years of therapy, about watching my daughter flinch at sudden movements and struggle with trust. I told her about the fear that still lived in both of us, the hypervigilance, the way we both checked and rechecked locks on doors and windows. But I also told her about Lily's art, her rock climbing, her circle of friends who loved her. I told her about my work as a trauma nurse practitioner, about the families I'd helped, about the foundation we'd started in Rachel's name. And I told her this, *, you participated in trying to kill us. You helped plan it, and you literally pushed a child off a cliff. Those are facts that don't change no matter how much therapy you get or how sorry you feel. But I believe that people can change. I believe that someone who does terrible things can choose to become someone different. So if you say you've changed, prove it. Keep doing the work. Keep helping other women recognize abusers. Keep being honest about what you did and why. Don't do it for me or for Lily. Do it because it's the right thing to do. That won't erase what you did, but it might mean Rachel's death and our trauma weren't completely meaningless. If even one woman avoids an abusive relationship because of your story, that's something. *. I didn't expect to hear back from her, and I didn't. The letter was enough. It was closure on that particular thread of the story, not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but acknowledgement. A recognition that complexity exists even in situations that seem black and white. Marcus, on the other hand, never showed remorse. Never apologized. Never admitted he'd done anything wrong. His appeals were based on technicalities and claims that he'd been framed, that Lily was lying, that I'd somehow orchestrated the whole thing to destroy him. Every single appeal was denied. Every claim was investigated and dismissed. Every attempt he made to rewrite history failed because the evidence, physical, testimonial, documentary, was overwhelming. And with each failed appeal, I felt a little more satisfaction. Because Marcus was learning, slowly and painfully, that he wasn't special. He wasn't above consequences. He was just another narcissist who'd finally met a situation he couldn't talk his way out of. His health continued to decline. The liver cancer was being treated but not cured. He was losing weight, losing hair, losing the physical attractiveness that had been one of his main tools of manipulation. I saw updated photos from his recent parole hearing. He looked 20 years older than his actual age, gaunt and grey and defeated. Good. I hoped he felt every ounce of that defeat. I hoped it consumed him the way his betrayal had almost consumed me. When Lily turned 16, something shifted in her. She'd been doing well. Therapy was helping, school was good, she had a boyfriend who was respectful and kind, but there was still this undercurrent of unfinished business. Something she needed to say that she hadn't been able to articulate yet. Marcus's first parole hearing was scheduled for year 7 of his sentence. Technically, with his life sentence, parole was virtually impossible, but Wyoming law required a hearing every few years for inmates serving life. It was mostly a formality, a chance for victims to give impact statements and for the board to confirm that yes, this person should absolutely remain incarcerated. Lily asked if she could attend and give a statement. "You don't have to," I told her. "You've already testified once. You've already told your story. Nobody expects you to do it again." "I know," she said. "But I was 11 then. I'm 16 now. I want to look at him as who I am now and tell him exactly what he took from me. Not as a scared kid, but as someone who survived him." So we went. The hearing was at the Wyoming State Penitentiary, in a small room with the parole board, Marcus, his lawyer, me, Lily, and Rachel Morrison's mother Patricia, who'd asked to give a statement as well. Marcus looked terrible. The cancer treatment had ravaged him. He was thin, pale, with prison tattoos poorly done on his arms and this defeated slump to his shoulders that would have made me feel sorry for him if he was anyone else. When he saw Lily walk into the room, something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or fear, but definitely not remorse. The parole board went through their standard questions. Had he participated in rehabilitation programs? Did he understand the severity of his crimes? Did he have a release plan, etc.? Marcus gave rehearsed answers about how he'd found God in prison, how he regretted his mistakes, how he wanted a chance to rebuild his life. He never once said what he actually regretted. Never specified what those mistakes were. Classic Narcissus behavior. Admit to vague wrongdoing without actually taking responsibility for specifics. Then it was time for victim impact statements. Patricia Morrison went first. She spoke about Rachel, about the daughter she'd lost, the grandchildren she'd never have, the hole in her family that would never be filled. She spoke about how Rachel had just been trying to make money for her acting classes, how she trusted the wrong person, how she died confused and terrified. My daughter was murdered because she had the misfortune of resembling someone this man wanted to kill, Patricia said, her voice steady but filled with decades of grief. She was kind. She was talented. She was loved. And she died as a prop in someone else's evil plan. Marcus Coleman took her from us, and no amount of time served will ever be enough. Then it was Lily's turn. She stood up, walked to the front of the room, and looked directly at her father. Marcus tried to hold her gaze but couldn't. He looked down at his hands, at the table, anywhere but at his daughter. "Look at me," Lily said, her voice clear and strong. "You spent 5 years telling me I was a burden, that you wished I didn't exist, that I ruined your life. So look at me now and see what a burden looks like when she refuses to die." Marcus's head snapped up. If you've made it this far in the story, do me a favor. Drop a comment right now about what you think Lily said next. Because what came out of my daughter's mouth in that moment was so powerful, so perfectly articulated, that I'll never forget a single word of it. And don't forget to check the description for more stories of survival and justice. "I'm 16 years old," Lily continued. "I should be worried about normal teenage things, grades, friends, college applications, whether the guy I like actually likes me back. Instead, I'm standing in a prison giving a victim impact statement to my father who tried to murder me. Do you understand how messed up that is?" "Lily, I never wanted to hurt you," Marcus started, but the parole board chair cut him off. "Mr. Coleman, this is not your time to speak. You'll have a chance to respond after." Lily smiled, cold and sharp. "It's okay. Let him interrupt. Let him show everyone here exactly who he is. Because that's what he does. He interrupts, he talks over people, he makes everything about him. Even now, even here, he can't let me have this moment." She turned back to the board. "I want to tell you what it's like to be pushed off a cliff by your own father. To hang from rocks by your fingernails while he stands above you and decides whether you're worth saving. To hear him say, 'Give it a minute, she'll fall like you're a piece of trash is waiting to see blown away by the wind.'" One of the board members looked physically ill. Another was writing furiously on her notepad. "I want to tell you what it's like to spend 3 hours wedged into rocks, bleeding, with a broken arm, playing dead because you know your own father wants you dead badly enough to wait and watch." Lily's voice never wavered as she continued, each word landing like a hammer. The room was so quiet you could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. "I want to tell you what the nightmares are like. How I wake up falling, every single time. How I can't go hiking anymore without having panic attacks. How I flinch when someone stands behind me because my brain remembers being pushed. How I had to learn to trust people all over again because the first man I ever trusted, the one who was supposed to protect me, tried to kill me instead." She paused, and I saw her hands trembling slightly. But her voice stayed strong. "But you know what? You failed. You tried to destroy me and you failed. I'm still here. I'm thriving. I have people who love me, real love, not whatever twisted thing you think love is. I have dreams and goals and a future. And you have nothing. You're sitting in this prison, dying slowly, with nobody who cares if you live or die. That's what you bought with your choices." Marcus opened his mouth, but Lily wasn't done. "The parole board will ask if I think you should be released. And my answer is no. Not now, not ever. Not because I'm afraid of you anymore. I'm not. You're pathetic. You're weak. You're everything you accused Mom of being. I say no because you haven't changed. You haven't shown real remorse. You haven't even admitted what you actually did. You talk about mistakes like you accidentally said something rude at dinner, not like you murdered someone and tried to murder your own child. She looked directly at him again. I hope you die in here, Dad. I hope you have years and years to think about what you threw away. I hope the cancer hurts. I hope every single day is miserable. Because that little girl you pushed off a cliff? She deserved better. She deserved a father who loved her. And now she has a life where you don't exist except as a cautionary tale. So congratulations. You're free from the burden of having a daughter. And I'm free from the burden of having you. She sat down next to me, and I grabbed her hand. It was shaking now, adrenaline finally catching up, but she'd done it. She'd said everything she needed to say. Marcus was given his chance to respond. He stood up, cleared his throat, and said, Lily, I know you're angry. But you have to understand, I never meant for any of this to happen the way it did. Things got out of control. I made bad decisions. But I'm your father, and I love you, and I hope someday you can forgive me. The board member who'd looked till earlier actually scoffed. It was the first time I'd ever heard a parole board member break their professional neutrality, and it was glorious. Mr. Coleman, the board chair said, her voice ice-cold, you've had 7 years to develop genuine remorse for your actions. What you just offered was perhaps the most inadequate, self-serving non-apology I've heard in 20 years of doing this job. You didn't acknowledge what you did. You didn't take responsibility. You spoke about bad decisions as if you forgot to file your taxes, not as if you murdered one woman and attempted to murder another woman and a child. She looked at her fellow board members. I don't think we need to deliberate on this one. All in favor of denying parole. All 5 hands went up immediately. Mr. Coleman, your parole is denied. You'll be eligible for another hearing in 3 years. I suggest you spend that time actually reflecting on your crimes and developing genuine remorse, though frankly, I doubt you're capable of it. This hearing is adjourned. We walked out of that prison into the Wyoming sunshine, and Lily turned to me with tears streaming down her face. I did it, Mom. I really did it. You did, baby. I'm so proud of you. I don't feel guilty anymore. I don't feel like it was my fault. I don't feel like I should have been able to stop him. I just feel free. And that was the moment I knew we'd truly won. Not when Marcus was convicted, not when he was sentenced, not when his appeals failed, but when my daughter stood in front of him and realized she didn't need his love, his approval, or his remorse to be whole. The years that followed were quieter. Marcus had 2 more parole hearings, both denied within minutes. His cancer went into remission, then came back, then went into remission again. He'd lived to be old, probably, trapped behind bars and forgotten by everyone who'd once known him. Vanessa served 12 years before being released on parole for good behavior. She moved to a different state, changed her name, and by all accounts was working as a counselor for domestic violence survivors. I didn't follow her closely. She'd done her time and was apparently trying to make amends. That was between her and her conscience. Lily graduated high school with honors, got a full scholarship to college for art therapy, and decided she wanted to work with traumatized children. I want to be for other kids what Dr. Hayes was for me, she told me. And she was brilliant at it. She also confronted something I'd been dreading. She wanted to hike Inspiration Point. Not to be morbid, she explained when she was 19. But I need to go back there. I need to stand at that spot and prove to myself that it doesn't have power over me anymore. Will you come with me? So we went. On a clear summer morning, with a professional guide and safety equipment and Dr. Hayes's blessing after months of preparation. We hiked that trail, and when we got to the spot where it happened, Lily stood at the edge, safely back from the cliff, harnessed and secured, and looked out over the valley. It's beautiful, she said softly. I'd forgotten that part. How beautiful it was before everything went wrong. We scattered wildflower seeds there, in Rachel's memory. We didn't stay long, didn't need to. Lily had faced her fear and found it was just a place. Just rocks and trees and sky. The power it had held over her was gone. I'm 47 now as I'm recording this final chapter. Lily is 24, thriving in her career, engaged to a man who treats her with the respect and love she deserves. I'm the director of the pediatric trauma unit at the hospital, and I still speak publicly about domestic violence and financial abuse. Marcus is still in prison. Still dying slowly. Still alone. Last I heard, he'd had a minor stroke and was in the prison medical unit. He's 63 years old and looks 80. I don't think about him much anymore. He's become what he always was, irrelevant. A footnote in our story, not the main narrative. Because the Rayal story was never about him. It was about survival. About a mother and daughter who were supposed to die on a mountain but chose to live instead. About turning trauma into purpose, pain into power, victimhood into victory. It was about proving that evil doesn't always win. That sometimes, the people who are supposed to be destroyed find a way to not just survive, but to thrive. To build lives so full of joy and meaning that the person who tried to end them becomes nothing more than a bad memory that fades a little more each day. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, thank you. Thank you for witnessing our truth, our pain, and our healing. If this story resonated with you, if you've survived your own Marcus Coleman, I want you to know something. You're stronger than you think. The fact that you're still here, still breathing, still trying, that's not weakness. That's power. Check the description below for resources on leaving abusive relationships, protecting yourself financially, healing from trauma. Share this story if you think it might help someone recognize the warning signs before it's too late. And remember, survival isn't just about not dying. It's about choosing to live fully, fiercely, and freely despite everything that tried to break you. My name is Rebecca Torres. I'm a survivor. My daughter is a survivor. And so are you. This is where our story ends, not with revenge, not with destruction, but with the simple, profound act of continuing to exist and thrive in a world that tried to erase us. We won.